Hello and welcome to Ask the Expert. If you're new to this series, my name is Madeline Countess and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm a director in our HCM practice here at Collaborative Solutions, and I've been with Collaborative about 8 years. Prior to joining Collaborative, I worked as an HR practitioner for an early adopter of Workday. So I've actually used this process as a customer. Today's topic, best practices for merit and bonus, is the second in a series of 3 year-end topics we're offering. Our most recent presentation for Ask the Expert was on our annual performance and talent review process, as it often leads up to or contributes to our merit and bonus process. We'll wrap up this series for 2020 in a couple of weeks with a session on payroll year-end processing. If you're interested in that, please stay tuned to our website and social media for announcements and the opportunity to sign up. So first, I'd like to introduce my colleagues. I'm fortunate today to be joined by 2 of my colleagues who have an extraordinary amount of experience with this process. So first, Jackie Smith from our implementation practice.
Thanks, Madeline. Hey, everyone. My name is Jackie Smith. I am a manager in our HCM practice. I have been with Collaborative about 5 years and in the Workday ecosystem for a little, probably over 9 years now. My main focus is compensation and talent, leading a lot of global implementations, leading those 2 functional areas. And I look forward to talking with you guys today.
Thanks, Jackie. So next we have Valerie Dixon from our CVS or post-production support practice. Valerie?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Valerie Dixon. I've been with Collaborative Solutions for 3 years. And prior to that, I was also a Workday customer. We were an early adopter and I was the primary administrator. I spent a majority of my career as an HR practitioner in the compensation space. And I spend most of my time in the CVS practice supporting our customers with their advanced compensation initiatives, and I'm certified in talent as well. I look forward to speaking with you this morning and hopefully giving you some helpful tips.
Thanks, Valerie. So before we begin, just a little bit about Collaborative. We are a full service finance, HR, and student consultancy. We offer a full range of services, including strategy, organizational change and training, implementation, and post-production support. We also have a couple of strategic partnerships that we use to help our customers get the best return on their investment for their Workday implementation. We've lots of things that we're proud of on this slide, but I think the most important thing to mention is how we continue to grow and protect our culture here at Collaborative, as evidenced by our 2 recent Great Places to Work awards for both millennials and women. So now moving on to our material for today, we want to jump into our merit and bonus process and give you an overview. So first I want to turn to Valerie, and let's just get an overview, Valerie. I haven't used this process as a customer in about 8 years, and I know it's changed a lot. So help me understand what I need to know if I am a new customer to Workday's merit and performance, or I'm sorry, merit and bonus.
Sure, Madeline, thanks. So I've listed a few of the benefits of using Workday for your compensation review. And the things that I think are the most important on the list is, first and foremost, the ability to leverage your most current employee data for the purpose of planning your awards for employees. The second reason is that, and also equally important, is your ability to leverage Workday's calculation engine to account for variables like waiting periods, eligibility, proration, and individual and company performance related to merit and bonus awards, for example. The third reason that I would share is the shared planning. Workday refers to it as shared participation. And what shared participation does is it assures visibility to appropriate planners as well as support roles like HR, business partners, for example, while maintaining appropriate security for this confidential and sensitive information. And then lastly, the thing I would say is a benefit of using the compensation review process in Workday is that once you've finalized your event, you can accurately and securely send updated base pay and other cash awards directly to payroll.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I know we're going to talk next about what are the benefits of using a consolidated process versus having a process that would be separate for merit and bonus. And I think we have Jackie for that question. Hi, Jackie.
Yep. Hello. So one of the considerations for using a consolidated process, if you want to launch a consolidated process that includes both merit and bonus in there, there's a few different key points to take into consideration. So we've got timing, and that's, can the merit and bonus be launched at the same time and kept open for the same amount of time? The second point is compensation review dates. Are the process period end dates the same for both merit and bonus? Typically, this is the last day of the fiscal year for which you're looking back on. These dates need to be the same if you're going to, the process period end date needs to be the same for both merit and bonus if you want to include them in a consolidated process. And then the third thing are compensation planners. So who is going to be the one proposing the awards? That role, for instance, managers, they will need to be able to propose both merit and bonus awards if you're going to use a consolidated process. On one consolidated process, you can't have different roles doing the planning. So if you don't allow managers, for instance, to propose bonus awards, but you do for merit, then you can't, unfortunately, include them in both merit and bonus in a consolidated process. You'll have to keep them separate.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't realize that, but it makes sense now that you say it, that we couldn't launch a consolidated process and let different people propose awards for the say.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, that's great to know. Okay, what about custom orgs? I know I've heard in the past a lot of buzz about Workday allowing the merit or bonus process to follow a custom organization instead of either the supervisory org or the location hierarchy. What can you tell me about that? And what should I be thinking about if I want to use that functionality?
Yes, so it's definitely an option. It is probably one that, probably anyone you ask from Workday or us is probably not going to recommend it. I mean, the biggest benefit to using a delivered organization type like supervisory org is really the maintenance effort, right? So if you are using a delivered organization and a delivered role like manager, these are auto-maintained in Workday. So you don't really have to do anything to the organization structure prior to launching. Whereas with the custom organization, you need to maintain that so that the structure is the way you want it for the comp process. And you need to manually, assign and keep the comp planner role updated. And it typically requires a lot more testing behind it, I will say that. So it's an option, it's doable, we've seen it done, but definitely our recommendation is to use one of the delivered organizations.
Okay, that's good to know. So I know you and I have had some conversations about this next question in the past. As I recently looked at this process, I noticed that there are many, many more date options than what we originally had when I used this process as a customer. So can you help me understand what the considerations are and what I should be thinking about as I look at those various dates? And how would I know what to put in there?
That is a good question. And I find myself going through each of these dates many, many times. So they honestly can be quite confusing. So there's like you said, there's multiple dates that get used in the process. The first one, and probably the most important one, is the effective date. This is the date that the merit and/or bonus awards take effect. So for merit, this is the date that my new base pay is going to take effect. So, you need to make sure that date is accurate. Employee visibility date, this can be used to drive the visibility of the awards to an employee if you don't want them to see it as of the effective date. If it's not used, the employee will see, the new base pay or the bonus payment that they're getting as of the effective date in Workday. So it's just something that some customers will use to give themselves some time to communicate the awards before the employee actually sees it in Workday, but it's not a required date. And then there's the process period start and end dates. So these are definitely important. These indicate the process period for which you are reviewing. So it's especially important if you are using proration in your award calculation, because Workday will use any relevant transactions within that process period to calculate the proration. So it doesn't look at any transactions ever that happened on an employee. It looks at the transactions that are within that process period. One thing to note is Workday used to derive, you entered the process period end date and it would derive the process period start date based on the frequency of the plan. You can now override the process period start date. So if you have a non-standard year, like maybe I have a customer right now who's got 371 days in their year, so they override the process period start date. The next date is the compensation snapshot date. This is the date for which you want to pull the employee's compensation as of, really. So if the award is a percentage of a comp basis, this is the comp basis used from a worker as of that date. And the last one is the organization snapshot date. And again, this is a date that, as of this date, this is going to be the organization hierarchy structure that's used. So for supervisory orgs, who reports to who as of this date. I think that's all the dates.
Yeah, that's pretty complicated.
It is.
I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the testing section.
Yep.
But it still hurts my head. Okay. All right. So I think next up, we want to turn to Valerie, and we want to talk, Valerie, about what should we be thinking about if we're a pay for performance system. So we want to get our performance scores into Workday. That can be a little tricky too from a timing standpoint. Can you give us some guidance on that?
Sure, Madeline.
There you go.
And I know this was covered in the last Ask the Expert series, but a couple of things where the touch points in merit are that you should be aware of include, ideally, of course, your performance review schedule will align with your merit schedule so that, it doesn't have to align perfectly, but you want to ensure that planners are provided with the most appropriate performance review rating score that's relevant to the award planning that they're completing. And that can be a rating. It can be a descriptive rating like meets expectations or exceeds expectations, for example. Or some clients use a value, an actual score. So both of those are available to you for helping you make decisions about merit awards for your employees that align with their performance. The other thing you should consider is typically, or most organizations have some performance reviews that they experience like a lag with, whether an employee's on a leave of absence or if the manager, whoever's responsible for completing the performance review, just doesn't get it completed in a timely way. And you should be prepared to make decisions about that related to your merit configuration. So for example, if you're using a compensation matrix that's based off of performance ratings, an employee does not have a performance rating, then they're going to default to 100% of the award. And so if you want to plan for that and provide a different reference or recommendation for your planners, then, excuse me, so sorry, you should, I think a delivery person came to the door. then you should consider accounting for that in your matrix if someone doesn't have a rating, for example.
Okay, so I could move them into something other than that full award is what you're saying, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
you just want to be aware that that's happening, right? So that you can give communicate with your managers what to do with those people. And then there are some configuration options that will drive a recommendation or provide a suggestion or a reference to the planner, depending on whether or not the planners have discretion, right? I mean, each organization makes their own decision about how much discretion the planners have, and then your configurations should support that. The last thing I would say about pay for performance, or two other points, is that the organization needs to decide if their funding for their merit adjustments is going to be based off of the target for the plan, or if it's going to be based off of the distribution of employees within the compensation matrix.
Right, that could change my pool a lot. That makes sense.
It could.
Yeah.
I mean, typically what we see with an organization, unless they're doing some sort of forced ranking with regards to their performance reviews, is they tend to be, their performance rating distribution tends to be skewed to the right, which, to your point, Madeline, is going to increase the pool above the amount that it would potentially be for based off just the target. But you can actually, and we'll probably talk about this in the testing segment, but you can model that, and you can model different configurations in testing to actually see what it does for your organization. And then the last thing I would say, the last thing I would say is that some organizations have criteria that modify their employees' individual performance for the purpose of a merit increase. And if so, you have the ability in the configuration to add a scorecard modifier to your compensation matrix. It's one of the things I like about compensation is it's a little more art than science sometimes.
Yes, yes. So if we move on to the next question, I really am anxious to hear your answer. I know the very first full phase 1 implementation I did, the customer had this requirement where they had a discretionary portion and a non-discretionary portion of their bonus. And, you know, back in the day when, you know, Workday releases were still numbered and they were in the single digits, we had to set up 2 bonus plans, one for the discretionary piece and one for the non-discretionary piece in order to enforce this. So tell me, if I were doing this again today, how would Workday handle that problem?
Sure. So when you're configuring and designing your bonus plans, and you create the default portions of your plan design in kind of the top half of the screen when you're looking at Workday's bonus plans. But then in the bottom half, you decide if your bonus plan is going to be based off of multiple performance factors. And whenever you choose the multiple performance factors option, that indicates to Workday that you are going to have a weighted bonus, and that a portion of your bonus is going to be attributed to individual performance or discretionary, and a portion of your bonus is going to be attributed to what Workday refers to as company performance, and that portion is non-discretionary. And one of the biggest discussion points I have with a lot of clients is they want to have a weighted bonus and they want to attribute a portion of their bonus to company performance, for example, but they get a little stuck sometimes when they realize that that portion of the bonus is non-discretionary and that the planners cannot edit that. So if you have, and that for some organizations, that's fine, and that's how their plan document for compensation has been designed, and that's how it's been communicated to employees. But for other organizations, the fact that there's sometimes a significant portion of the bonus, maybe 50%, for example, is non-discretionary, that's problematic. And sometimes they want the planner to be able to have discretion over the full amount of the bonus, even though they want it to be impacted by company results. So there's some creative things that we can do with plan design around that, with modifiers and what have you. But at the end of the day, if you design your plan with multiple performance factors and include a portion in company performance, that piece is non-discretionary, and planners do not have the ability to edit that. They can only edit, in the event, the discretionary portion.
Okay, that's great. That actually sounds like it would have worked for my customer. It may not work for all, but that was really our requirement. Workday wasn't able to solve for that all those years ago. So I'm glad to hear that functionality has really grown and expanded so that we could have done that on one bonus plan instead of two.
It certainly has.
So, all right. Yeah, so speaking of growth and expansion and some of the changes Workday has made, let's turn to Jackie to talk about some of the new functionality that came to us in 2020 R2. Take it away, Jackie.
All right. So a couple that I think are worth highlighting. So you can now configure how Workday displays editable currency values and organization budgets for planners and reviewers. The editable currency values, I think, is especially useful for global organizations. So this is on the comp review options. There is a new planner reviewer preferences section with two preference options where you can configure where you can configure what the default should be for each. So the first option is edit in currency, where you can configure to display either the pay range currency or the reference currency from the process for the editable fields in the grid. There used to be no option, so the planners would have their budget, their pools in the reference currency. So let's say that was set in USD, but then on the grid, they were planning in the pay range currency. So it sometimes wasn't apples to apples for them. So this gives them that option. And then the second new preference is organization budgets. You can configure to display either all my organizations, so my organizations and below, or my current organization, so just my direct reports budget wheel on the organization summary. And then with both of these preference options, you can select exposure to planners or reviewers, which means planners and reviewers can override the default that's configured. So the default preference that's selected, they can actually override that from their inbox items and throughout the compensation review. So it gives a lot of flexibility.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, I think it's exciting, and I know a lot of us we're excited to see it come. So and I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations are already using it. And then the second thing I want to bring up is the compensation review coordination of events redesign. This doesn't have any real impact to the end user, right? But it does make it simpler for an administrator on how you configure and coordinate parallel events during a compensation review. These are confusing no matter what, and require tons of testing, but you can configure now what we call participation rule sets with more straightforward options for handling employees, polls, and awards. So if you have parallel rule events configured and you haven't launched a process yet, Workday is recommending that you do reconfigure to the new redesigned. The old way of configuring, you'll see, has a do not use on it. So they are recommending, unless you've already launched a process with them, obviously not change them. But if you haven't, you should reconfigure to use the new redesign.
Thanks. That's a really great point for all of our customers as they're thinking about launching and testing.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So I think we've already kind of started to wade into our next topic, but our next topic is for you, Jackie, and it's testing. I know the last time I implemented this process, it really took a fair amount of time to test, and we really wanted to make sure we tested a lot of different situations, partly just to understand how Workday would handle particular situations. What happens if the manager quits and the task is in their inbox? What am I going to do to make sure those people aren't left out of my process and I can close my process? Things like that. So can you talk to me about what kind of testing considerations and advice we're giving our customers today?
Yeah, absolutely. So testing the compensation review process before you even launch your process, you want to think about all the different scenarios that can affect the calculation of the award. So for instance, does your proration look at the hire date or time and position? And then you'll want to make sure you have all of those different types of scenarios or transactions to use in your testing. So there's a lot of pre-planning and like pre-testing that goes into compensation review testing, right? You need to have all of those types of transactions and scenarios ready to be used in your compensation review testing. So, so to your point, there's tons of different scenarios that need to be sort of teed up in order to test the compensation review process. So it might require you to process a few test transactions like new hires, job changes, terminations, comp changes, for example. And then, the elements that are important to test. So testing the compensation review process is different than testing a business process transaction, for example. It's less about if the workflow is correct, but rather, are all the calculations and amounts operating and being displayed as expected? And the parallel or how are the parallel transactions or events being handled within the process as well? So you'll want to look at things like, are the pools or the budgets calculating correctly, right? That's the overall number that the planners see. Is any proration of the awards, is it working as you intended? If using a comp matrix, is the performance rating of the worker, for example, driving the correct recommendation? And Valerie pointed out, you'll want to get those cases where what happens if a worker doesn't have a performance rating? You want to test those because that's going to happen. Not all managers get the reviews done in time. So you want to test those cases where what happens with the people that don't have a rating, for instance. Are terminations or parallel events being handled correctly? So Madeline, to your point, there was a manager change. Where did that inbox item go? Is it with the new manager? Did that work as expected? And obviously, are the awards being calculated correctly? Is the right comp basis amount being used in the calculation? Are the bonus funding factors correct in the calculation? So when you're testing, you'll have this process open for a very long time before, testing all of these different things before you actually, close it out and finalize it. And then you obviously want to test to make sure that it feeds to payroll correctly.
Okay, wow. That sounds like that's going to take some time.
Yes, definitely.
So before we move to the next topic, I'm curious as to how long you see that typically taking. Do you think customers can do that in a week or two, or is that really more like a 6-week kind of thing?
I'd say the minimum 3 weeks so allow a minimum of 3 weeks of testing.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. So I think next we're going to turn to Valerie for some tips and tricks and really start to talk about, what things should we check before we launch our process in production. I remember the first time we pressed the button when I was a customer, we all sat around in a room and everybody reviewed that person's screen before we pressed that button because we were a little nervous about doing it. So give us some guidance here, Valerie.
Sure. Well, I don't want to spoil one of my tips and tricks, but I have a solution for that, Madeline. So we'll get to that in just a second. The first and most obvious thing that you should do prior to launching your process, and you probably will have completed or started as part of your testing, is you want to audit your employees' compensation plan assignments and confirm that those are accurate and that the right employees are assigned the right plans for the purpose, because the plan assignment and the plan assignment date is going to be what pulls the employee into the event and makes them eligible for the event. The second thing you want to do is, in general, you want to review your plan design and just make sure that your plan design hasn't changed from the prior year. You might want to review your waiting period, you want to review your proration rules and confirm that they still conform to your organization's requirements and policies. We mentioned it earlier, but it bears repeating, is that if you use custom orgs or custom planners for your comp review event, these assignments are not dynamic and you would need to audit these assignments. So, and then just test, right? That's what you do to get ready to launch an event.
All right, thanks, Valerie. So I think we have one last question, and then we have a few in the chat we'll turn to. So what additional functionality, Valerie, have you seen leveraged as we support our comp admins through this process?
Sure. So this gets to the heart of your initial comment, Madeline, about being nervous about hitting that launch button on your compensation event, because that that is the point of no return when you're launching that event. And depending on how many planners you have, that sends an inbox task to all of your planners. One of the features that's available on that business process that I think is very underutilized and that I recommend to all of my clients is there's a participant detail step delay on the complete employee award step. What this feature does is it allows you to pick a time frame, like 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, for example, and it allows the compensation administrator to fully launch the compensation event, but it does not go into the planner's Workday inbox until the delay period has expired. And so what this does is it creates a window for the compensation administrator to review and look at the event and make sure, one last pass that everything's accurate. A lot of my clients use this feature if they're going to be, some clients use the Import Employee Awards EIB to add in a market adjustment, for example, or a lump sum amount, or other kinds of awards that the administrators are controlling and they just want to make visible to the employees or to the planners. Or if you're customizing your pools and you need to use the EIB Import compensation review budget pools, that creates a window for you to do that before the planners are getting in and being active. And it also allows you, if necessary, if you in the unfortunate event you have to cancel the event, no harm, no foul, right? Because your planners haven't actually been planning.
Okay, that actually, I could see the use in that. And I'm glad to know that's available now.
Yep. It's often missed, but it's a very valuable tool.
It sounds like it, yes.
The other thing I would encourage administrators to consider is the review employee award step, which can be added after the complete employee award step. And the advantage of this step in the business process is it allows administrators to continue to review the process or provide necessary reporting to senior level management while the event is still in progress, and employee awards can still be modified via the event versus having to go into each employee record after the event has been finalized. The review step is very versatile. The other thing it also does is once you move to the review step, if you have planners who have been lagging or not been taking care of completing or approving their inbox items related to the event, it pulls them out. It pulls the task out of your planner's inbox so that they can no longer modify versus having to use the
Okay.
complete on behalf of step, which is a little more cumbersome.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
And the last one is probably one that, sorry, that everybody probably already knows. It's just, you know, be sure to leverage the delivered compensation review details and audit reports. These Workday delivered reports can be copied and then customized to meet your organization's specific needs.
Okay, that's a great call out. Thanks, Valerie. So I think now let's turn to some of the questions in the chat. So the first question that I want to ask is for Jackie, and it's, are the process period end date and comp snapshot dates always the same if it's the calendar year, or can they sometimes be different?
The process period end date and the comp snapshot date can be different. Yeah, so you can make the comp snapshot date. You know, you can make the comp snapshot date later or earlier if you want to look at comp as of earlier than the process period end date, but they can be different.
Great, thanks. Hang on, I want to get to my next question. Goodness, we have all kinds of questions coming in. Let's look at another one. During a comp review process, can you plan merit based on a current salary, but award the bonus based on the salary as of a different date? Valerie, Jackie, either one of you want to weigh in on that?
Madeline, say that again for me.
So the question is, if you're during one process, can you plan merit based on a current salary, but award the bonus based on a salary as of a different date? So what if I wanted my, my merit to be based on my, 115 salary and my bonus to be based on my 1231 salary?
So unfortunately, no. So you can always change the comp snapshot date for merit. You can't change the comp snapshot date for bonus. The bonus comp snapshot date will always be the process period end date.
Okay, that is helpful information. Thank you.
I'd like to add something to that, Madeline. You could opt to use eligible earnings as your basis for your bonus. However,
that's a good call out.
However, when you do that, you are losing some proration functionality. So it should be noted that it's a trade-off.
Right.
You can specify the amount, but then you lose some proration functionality specifically. I don't know if there's anything else you know of, Jackie, that you lose if you're using eligible earnings or not.
Nope, that will be the only one really, yep.
Okay, good call out. All right. So there's lots of questions. I know we won't get to them all, but let's see if we can take a couple more. Do we have any advice on how to best handle an employee who's part of the merit review process and receives a salary change during that process for some other reason? So what if somebody gets a counteroffer? What do we typically see happening there? It's not a promotion situation, but our employees getting some kind of off-cycle raise. Either of you want to weigh in on that one, ladies?
Well, the rule sets allow you to make a decision on how well, first of all, if you don't have either the older functionality for participation rules or the new rule sets, you're in a blackout period and you won't be able to complete a transaction like that.
Right, you can't do it anyway.
Yeah, unless you remove the worker from the event, which is manual, and then complete the transaction and then put the worker back. The rule sets and the participation rules and general parallel event rules allow you to make a decision as an organization exactly how you want to handle that. And when all else fails, whether you have the rule sets or not, you can pull someone out of the event and take care of whatever transaction needs to be handled separately.
Okay. So can either of you share what you typically see in terms of promotions? Do we see our customers including promotions within the process or not? And how do we think that works? Jackie, Valerie, either one of you want to share on that?
Yeah, so you can obviously include promotions within a merit process, a consolidated merit process. I see it like 50-50, right? I see 50% of organizations doing it, 50% not. I think one of the biggest reasons is that it does still kick off a change job event. So it's not like when the compensation planning process, when it's finalized, it's, you get your merit, your increases, it's done, that's what's going to be in the system. But with promotions, it still does kick off the change job process, and you have options to configure that. And then another thing with the promotions in the merit process is you can only change someone's position to a open position within that organization. You can't be moving them to different organizations within the comp review process. So a lot of our customers find that as a limitation, with using promotions within the merit.
Yeah, I can see that. Right. Okay. Valerie, anything you'd like to add on that one?
Just that Jackie and I were actually discussing this yesterday, that when you do use that promotion, you cannot, the visibility date on your comp review event does not control visibility to the promotion. So if you're using the visibility date, as soon as the change job is processed, the employee can see the promotion. And so, similar to Jackie's point, some of my clients choose not to use that because they want more time to they need more time to approve, communicate the promotion.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. So I think we have time for one last question before we close. If we didn't get to your question, we will answer them when we publish the FAQ. But the last question I wanted to just ask is, I know in the past Workday has recommended, and we have recommended, that customers keep this process open for the shortest possible period of time. So do we see that recommendation potentially changing with the new participation rules and us maybe relaxing a little bit how long we keep that process open? Or are we still thinking shortest possible time, get it over, get it done? Ladies?
I'm still going with shortest possible time.
I'm thinking that too, but I just wanted to ask because you guys are the experts. All right.
I second that.
We recommend it because, it is, regardless of, I think this enhancement doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that it still causes confusion with parallel events happening while a process is open, right? It doesn't take away from that. It made it a little bit easier for administrators, sure, but I still think that we would recommend trying to keep it open for the shortest possible amount of time.
All right. So with that, we are at the end of our time. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. I will not be moderating the payroll session. My colleague, Mary Ellen Kellemer, will be moderating that session. So I look forward to seeing all of you again in 2021 as we reconvene on these sessions. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great work day.